On August 31st, 2019, the wrestling world changed forever when AEW champion Chris Jericho uttered a 6-word phrase.
A little bit of the bubbly.
Since then, a little bit of the bubbly has transcended professional wrestling and most of pop culture itself, right on down to the present day in which Knocking Point has released a little bit of the bubbly. Yes, Chris Jericho has his very own, not champagne, it's sparkling wine. It is still bubbly though. So I want to do a taste test of a little bit of the bubbly, but I know nothing about this sort of thing. I don't really drink wine, I don't drink champagne, sparkling wine, whatever. So I brought in a ringer, an expert if you will on the subject. Joining me now is Dave Graydon. He is a certified sommelier, or Somm for short. Dave, thanks for coming on to my channel, and tell me more about what it is to be a certified somm.
So basically the sommelier program is a guild of sommeliers that recognize levels of certification in the wine expertise business. Tasting, learning, being able to identify things, but also recognize the quality and the different production that goes into it.
So how long did it take you to get to the point where you are now at your level of certification?
Well, I always say that to get where I got was through the bottle, a whole lot of tasting and a whole lot of trying, but it did take several years to kind of hone the craft, and I had been a bartender and worked in restaurants for a long time, so I was familiar with it. But to get to that level, and there are much higher levels than what I'm at currently, to get to that level did take a couple years.
Let's just talk about the product we were mentioning here. A little bit of the bubbly. It is Chris Jericho's proprietary wine. It comes from Knocking Point, which is based out of Walla Walla, Washington. The city's so nice, they named it twice. And also it's owned by Stephen Amell, who is the star of the show Arrow, and he has his history with the stars of AEW. So it all comes full circle that he would help AEW produce a little bit of the bubbly. Now, Dave, I gotta ask you a question here. How familiar are you with professional wrestling?
I have to be honest, and I think I told you off camera that my last experience with watching wrestling was probably WrestleMania when Hogan was reigning. So
well, early days.
I'm about as familiar with wrestling as you are with wine.
Okay, then I guess we're even. That's why we joined forces here in this video. So what are we looking for when we're going to be tasting and judging this product here?
Basically, sight, smell, and taste.
Important distinction here. This is labeled as American sparkling wine. It is called a little bit of the bubbly, and it's easy to call it champagne, but that's not what we're calling it here. Why is that? Explain to people who don't know why it's not called champagne.
Absolutely, Brian. So champagne, in order to be called champagne, actually has to come from the Champagne region of France. Most French wines name after the region, where most American wines name after the grape that's contained in the bottle. Other countries have their own specifications and regulations. In Spain, it would be called cava. In Italy, they call it prosecco or spumante. And then in America, we do have to call it sparkling wine.
We've got Chris Jericho there with his AEW championship belt, a little bit of the bubbly. You've got this kind of like faux, faded, distressed look on the black of it. What do you think of, just from an aesthetic standpoint, how do you like this bottle and this label?
From the strictly aesthetic standpoint, the label has definitely had some money put into it, and
yeah, so there's some embossing here with like the texture on his jacket, the sunglasses, the belt. It's not just a piece of sticker paper slapped on there.
Absolutely, and not only the texture but different materials.
I do like the back of the label here. A libation suitable for Le Champion. Well, I'm glad you're here to help me with this because, like I said, I know nothing about tasting or judging sparkling wine. I basically bought this because my favorite wrestler is on the label, which, to be honest, is how I make most of my purchasing decisions in life, is whether or not a wrestler is on the packaging.
So one interesting thing, we call this metal part here the cage, which probably translates into the wrestling world.
Yes, actually that's quite apropos.
Typically, as a somm on the floor, we would have a towel or a napkin over this to create a little bit of a safer barrier.
Should I get a towel or a napkin while we're here? Or?
We'll be okay right here. We want to just kind of rock back and forth and get that loosened up. What we used to teach in our food and wine classes is you kind of want it to sound like a nun's fart. Just a little poof.
There you go. A nun's fart, ladies and gentlemen. Could be a little bit of the bubbly. We could have a lot of the bubbly.
Looking for the sight, and you want to be able to see through clear onto a white or paler area, and looking through the top of the glass, through the wine itself, you're looking for any kind of obvious flaws, anything that would be floating in there, any kind of sediment, or anything that is telling us that the wine went bad in the bottle. With bubbles, you want them to go straight up the glass.
Are you saying that there's bubbles that go side to side or just don't rise? Like, what are you looking at? What's the bad?
The bad is if they take a zigzag pattern. So that
Okay.
means there's something in the wine itself that's blocking that.
So it passes the sight test. Now
Correct.
the aroma is what we're checking this, right?
Sure.
So, there we go.
So we kind of waft it around, take those couple of whiffs and pull it away. You breathe a little of the clear air and the oxygen. What you look for is you look for either fruit or non-fruit. So fruit can be anything ranging from lemons and oranges and pears and apples, and then non-fruit would be like minerality, stone, any kind of metal or kind of odd flavors and aromas that don't quite fit the fruit category.
And that's in the metal and stone. That's coming from like the barrels, like what they're being aged in usually, or
It can come from the barrels, but a lot of times it's the grape itself coming from where it's being grown. So those roots are going deep into the ground. They could wrap around some rocks, and it could be very iron or ferrous soil that they're growing in, so it translates into the wine.
That's very fascinating to me. The fact that something is, it's like it makes sense. Beginning with the roots can affect the flavor, but for something to be so a small microscopic injection of the flavor to affect the wine in the final product, that's fascinating to me. Now I guess there's one thing left to do, and that's drink like the champion drinks and have a sip.
Le Champion.
Le Champion. He gets it.
Pretty smooth. I mean, right off the bat, we do a little bit of that mouth rinse and wash it. What I always used to say is mood, food, and attitude. So whatever you had for breakfast or what kind of attitude you have going into it always affects your palate and how you taste. So you get a little bit of that minerality. Washington is really known to have a lot of different kinds of minerals and rocks in their soil. Nice bright lemony, a little bit of that kind of tart pear, getting from the Riesling itself.
I taste the pear. I can definitely detect that. These are valued about $23 a bottle if you don't include shipping. These came in packs of 2, and then there's shipping involved with that. So at $23 a bottle, would you say a little bit of the bubbly is worth the cost?
I would concur. I would say that it's worth the cost. There's a very famous wine producer that makes a lot of boxed wine, and he said wine should never cost more than $10. But what I always used to say is no two things. What you like and what you don't. Doesn't really matter the price or the cost. If you like it and it's worth it to you, then go for it. Don't let anyone tell you any different. There's value in the label, there's value inside the bottle as well.
You know your way around pairing foods. So what kind of food would you pair this with?
So because it does finish a little on the drier side.
I'm gonna have seconds, by the way.
Very good, go for it. I would put this more like shellfish, like oysters would be really nice with this. Like a nice shrimp ceviche that's not too spicy, but it has a little bit of that acid kick to it.
Would you have crab with it?
Crab would be delicious.
Would you have maybe a Boston crab? Because Walls of Jericho, basically a Boston crab. I get it. Bubbly crab, you get it. Well, Dave, thank you very much for coming on to this video here and helping me taste a little bit of the bubbly. I learned a lot about this kind of thing. I hope you all got something out of this as well. And yeah, I think I know what I'm going to have for lunch today. Well, not just for lunch, with my lunch. Okay. If you had a little bit of the bubbly, let us know what you think about it in the comments section below. And of course, if you want to actually buy some of the stuff, I have the website for it right here at the bottom of the screen and in the description. So for Mr. Dave Graydon, I'm Brian Zane. I'll see you next time. And Dave, do you want to say the line as we tag out here? Do you want to say Jericho's famous line?
I'll have a little bit of the bubbly.
Damn straight.